Hey friends, welcome back to Homestead on a Prayer. We are here with another Christmas cookie recipe today. Today we are going to be making white chocolate peppermint cookies. This is another one of my favorites. I have a cookie swap coming up tomorrow, so I need to make two types of cookies. So today we're going to make the white chocolate peppermint, and meet me back here tomorrow for another delicious type of cookie. So I'm just going to bring you over to the counter. Let's get started with our white chocolate peppermint cookies. So because I'm making cookies for a cookie swap, I need quite a few of them, so I'm going to be doubling this recipe. This recipe is supposed to make about 18 cookies, and I'm supposed to bring about 3 dozen of 2 different kinds. So we're doubling the recipe today. The first thing I'm going to start with is probably just over half a cup of white chocolate chips, which I am going to bring over to my microwave, and I'm going to melt those. So the recipe says to use 6 ounces of white chocolate total, and then it gets split into 3 parts. I'm doubling it, so I'm using 12 ounces, which is the same as a whole bag of white chocolate chips. So this is a third of it. We're gonna melt these and add them to our bowl. So my favorite way to melt chocolate is in the microwave. So we're going to stick these chocolate chips in the microwave for 30 seconds, stir them, then for another 30 seconds, stir them. Keep repeating until these are fully melted. So you can see after 30 seconds in the microwave, they look pretty much the same. If you stir them, you can feel like they're starting to soften up a little bit, and then there's a little bit of residue on my spoon, but they're still pretty much solid. So for another 30 seconds, they're gonna go right in. So after the second 30 seconds, you can see that they're definitely starting to soften. They still need a little more time, but when we stir them, they start to kind of break apart. So I think one more 30-second interval is going to be enough to do this. All right, these were just in for another 30 seconds. The bowl is actually getting a little bit hot now. So we're just gonna stir these up. These look like they're pretty well melted. So once you get your white chocolate melted, you're just going to set it to the side to cool a little bit. So we are going to now mix together our dry ingredients. So for our dry ingredients, we are first going to need 3.5 cups of flour. So to our flour, we are going to add 1 teaspoon of baking powder and half a teaspoon salt. We're just going to mix that up. So in goes our teaspoon of baking powder. Half a teaspoon of salt. We're just going to whisk this up and set it to the side. Now in this large bowl here, I'm going to beat together 2 sticks of butter and 2/3 of a cup of sugar. This would of course be easier to do in a stand mixer. My stand mixer paddle attachment is missing. I've ordered another one, but it still has not come in yet. So for the moment, we're going to just be using this mixing bowl with a hand mixer. So let's get our 2 sticks of butter right into this bowl here. And then about 2/3 of a cup sugar added right in. All right, so before we add in the other ingredients, we're just going to cream up our butter and sugar together with the hand mixer. Just gonna scrape down the sides of the bowl and make sure that everything's really getting incorporated. This does feel pretty light and fluffy, so I think the hand mixer's doing a good job. Beat it up a little bit more. So our butter and sugar looks nice and smooth. Probably not quite as smooth as it would be with a stand mixer, but I think it's still gonna come out completely fine. So to this bowl here, we are now going to add in our cooled white chocolate. Once we get all that melted white chocolate added in, we're just going to beat this up until it's smooth. So we've got our white chocolate all incorporated in with our butter and sugar. Now we're going to add 2 eggs. I have 2 eggs that I've cracked into this mug here. I'm just going to go ahead and give them a little bit of a beat. We're going to add those in, and then we're also going to add 2 teaspoons of vanilla. Now I have my nice homemade vanilla here. We're just going to scoop out 2 teaspoons and add that in to this mixture as well. I really need to decant some of this vanilla into a smaller container. It's a little bit hard fishing out the vanilla amongst all these vanilla beans here. Those weren't quite full spoons, so I'm gonna add a little more. There we go. If you haven't made your own homemade vanilla, I highly recommend it. It's really delicious. It's better, if you let it sit long enough, it's better than anything you can get at the store, and you save so much money doing that. I do have another shipment of vanilla beans coming in sometime late December or January, so I will be doing a video about that whenever my beans come in. But for now, we're going to focus on our white chocolate peppermint cookie. We're just gonna run our mixer again to get these eggs and vanilla incorporated in here. Just go ahead and scrape down the sides of the bowl regularly to make sure that everything's getting incorporated evenly. All right, so we've got our wet ingredients all mixed in. Now it's time to add our dry ingredients. So we're going to add about half of this to the mixture, mix it up, and then once it's incorporated, we'll add the other half. It just makes it mix a little more evenly that way. Let's get about half of this in here. I think that's about half. Now, I think the stand mixer does a better job at controlling the flour from flying around everywhere. So when I'm using a hand mixer, I kind of like to incorporate it a little bit by hand first, just to make sure it gets moistened and doesn't fly everywhere. We're just going to stir this up a little bit with our spatula here. Yeah, this dough has potential to be messy. I'm just gonna mix this up as best I can. All right, let's see if that is good enough to use our mixer. All right, let's go ahead and add the rest of our dry ingredients into the bowl. Again, I'm gonna try to incorporate this a little bit with a spatula if I can. The dough is definitely getting a lot stiffer and trickier to work with, so it's getting a little bit harder to do. I'm just gonna do the best I can and then switch to the mixer. All right, we are gonna call that good enough. Once you get your dough all mixed up, we're going to add half of our remaining white chocolate chips in here. So this is about another half cup or so. Pour that right in here. So these cookies have lots of layers of white chocolate flavor. You saw at first the white chocolate that we melted and incorporated into the batter. Now, of course, we're adding white chocolate chips just to give it that little bit of a kind of a chunky texture. And then finally, once these come out of the oven and cool, we are going to coat them with another white chocolate peppermint glaze, which is going to be really delicious. So for now, let's just get our chocolate chips incorporated. So now we've got our batter all done and mixed up, it's time to actually shape the cookies. So what you're going to do is take about a tablespoon or so of dough, don't need to really be precise, just kind of roll it into a ball. And then we're going to arrange these on the cookie sheet, just leave a couple inches between them because they will spread out a little bit. I like to flatten them ever so slightly. You do not have to do that, you can just leave them as a ball if that's easier for you. So I'm just gonna get the rest of these rolled out and set up on our cookie sheet. So our first tray of cookies is ready. I have our oven preheated to 350 degrees. Recipe says to cook these for about 15 minutes. I am going to start them at 12 minutes just because I like to always go a little bit under what the recipe recommends. Also because I made these probably slightly smaller because I want to make sure that I get my full 3 dozen. So let's pop these in the oven. I will meet you back here when they're done. So I just pulled the first batch of cookies out of the oven. You can see you want to pull them out before they really start browning on the edges because you don't want these to be too crispy. They're kind of a crunchy cookie anyway. But you can see how they're starting to be, I don't know if you can see it well in the camera, starting to be little bits, just tiny little cracks on the edges. So that's how you can tell that they're done. So I pulled this batch out. These are actually slightly smaller than I was going for, and I ended up having enough to make another 2.5 dozen after that, so I'm gonna end up with about 3.5 dozen. All right, so I got the rest of the cookies in the oven. These cooked for about 12 minutes, and I think that was just about right. So I set the timer on the others for 12 minutes as well. They might need a hair longer because I did make them slightly bigger. So what we're going to do is let these cookies cool completely down to room temperature before we add the white chocolate glaze. So I'm going to let them finish cooking. I'll meet you back here once they're done and completely cooled. All right, so you can see here that all our cookies are baked and cooled. So now it's time to do the finishing touch, which is to put a white chocolate peppermint glaze on these cookies. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to take a few candy canes. We're going to put them in this Ziploc bag here and kind of crush them up. Okay, so we have 4 broken up candy canes in this bag here. We're just gonna seal this up. Here's where you get to get a little bit of aggression out and just kind of whack it a little bit with a rolling pin. So I don't like to completely pulverize it. I like to make sure there's a variety of pieces in here. There's a couple that in here that are still a little big that I'll probably give another whack to. but I don't like to turn it all into complete dust either. All right, so that looks pretty good. So let's go ahead and pour these candy cane pieces into this bowl here. Sometimes when I make this, I do end up having to pound up a couple more candy canes partway through, but we'll start with 4 and we'll see if this is enough. So we'll set those candy canes to the side. I'm gonna go ahead and melt up the rest of the white chocolate chips the same way I melted up the first batch. All right, so here we go. Our white chocolate is all melted. Now to this melted white chocolate, we are going to need to add 8 teaspoons of heavy cream. That's just under 3 tablespoons. So I'm just going to use this to measure just a little shy of 3 tablespoons here. And we're going to add this right in. All right, so now we've got our cream incorporated into our white chocolate. Now we need to add a little bit of peppermint extract. Now you're going to add peppermint extract to taste, but you want to try to get a very small amount because this is very strong flavored. And I'm guessing what I added may have been a little heavy. Let's mix it up and give it a taste. All right, it definitely smells minty, so let's give it a little bit of a taste and see. I actually think that's a good amount. So that was probably, I didn't really measure it. I'd say it's probably a little less than a 1/4 teaspoon. Probably more like 1/8 of a teaspoon. So you just want to try to do a really small amount, pretty much as small amount as possible because you can always add more. So now we've basically got our assembly line going here. We're going to take our cookie, dip it first in the white chocolate, then in the peppermint, and then let it sit on the platter to harden. So I'm not really precise with it. I try to get about like that, kind of a little coating on the middle of it, and then just kind of dip it lightly in the peppermints. And there you go. Now you want to work fairly quickly because this white chocolate can start to harden up a little bit and kind of lose its dippable consistency. If that does happen, just pop it back in the microwave for a few seconds just to loosen it back up. So our cookies are all done and I think they came out beautiful. So these are really good. I make these every year and they're definitely one of our favorites. Plus they're just so pretty and festive for Christmas or pretty much any winter occasion. So they just have that really subtle hint of peppermint flavor. So let's give a taste test to one. So I'll let you guys know how this is. It's really good. The peppermint flavor is really subtle. It's not overpowering. Of course, you have the peppermint candy canes crushed on top. There's a little bit of peppermint flavor in the white chocolate glaze. But overall, it's a really mild, mellow cookie. Really good and really delicious. Usually, honestly, I am kind of on the side of preferring the really chewy cookies. This is definitely more of a crunchy cookie, so I make an exception for this one. But these go on my must-bake list every year. So these cookies are ready for my cookie swap. I'm gonna go ahead and pack them up. We have a few extra just for our family to keep. And I'm going to be making another cookie recipe for my cookie swap tomorrow. So definitely check back if you want to see some more delicious cookies. All right, I hope you guys are having a great day. I hope you're enjoying kind of this week of cookies, making lots of cookies with me this week. If you have any other favorite cookies that you want to recommend in the comments, go ahead and leave those because I would love to see what everyone else likes for cookies. All right, I hope you guys are having a great day. I'll see you next time. Bye, guys.